Hey everybody, welcome back to Electric Cafe. Today's album review is on John Foxx's solo album from 1980 called Metamatic. Um, if you guys don't know John Foxx was the original lead singer of Ultravox, and I think he was on their first three albums before he left and Major came on, and then he went solo and had I think four or five albums, and then he sort of retired and then or went away from music business and sort of got into I think he got into photography, and then came back and has been working on a lot of ambient albums and different music in the last like 25 years or so as well. Kind of off and on a couple times, but very talented artist and very unique voice. And if you don't know this album, I would definitely highly recommend this album to check out. So yeah, we're going to review it, review the songs, give them a score, and then review the overall album and give it a score as well. So we'll jump right into this. This is actually I'm trying to remember what year I got this. Sometime around like, I don't know, maybe like 2014 or so. I think I got this reissue. I think this came out. So yeah, so the first track, Plaza. Really great keyboard sounds, bass, rhythm, programming. John Foxx has such a cool voice, very unique, very cool voice, and he really tries to be like I wouldn't say haunting, but he kind of has that powerful voice and kind of eerie voice where it's unique and sort of sings a little bit operatic or dramatic, and it really works especially well with this style of music, even more so than what he sort of evolved in through his first four or five solo albums. They got a little bit more rocky, maybe a little bit more alternative, maybe just not as minimal and as electronic as this album. I really like the echo on his voice, and just Plaza is a really cool track. It's a great opener as well. 3 stars. A very good track. Track number 2, He's a Liquid. Cool bass, interesting vocals for sure. It's funky, which is always something I look for. That's really cool within very minimal electronic songs. They're still using a real bass player, which I really admire and I really like. You think of like Japan with Mick Carnes and even Duran Duran and a lot of the better new wave artists were still using a real bass player. Of course, there were some that didn't and were successful and are really good as well. But it's really cool to hear like a funky bass line over underneath, sort of backing some more electronic song. I think it's cool. I think it's a cool balance. I got He's Liquid, 2.5 stars. Underpass is one of my more liked songs on the album. The strings are great, haunting. It's got a cool beat. Really layered the keyboards really well on this track, and again the bass line's really strong. I got it 3.5 stars. Metal Beat. This track certainly gets some comparisons to Metal on Metal by Kraftwerk. It's minimal, nice groove, good keyboard sounds for sure, but it's definitely got that Kraftwerk feel. I got it 3 stars. Track number 5, No One Driving. This one's a little bit more sequenced. John's more in his vocal range, here. This is kind of where his vocal range is for the most of his solo career. Going forward, I really like it. It's 3 stars. My least liked track is next, which is a New Kind of Man. It's kind of proto techno. It's futuristic, but it's a good track. I got it 2.25 stars. I can't really say anything bad about it, but except for the initial sounds, it really doesn't go too much farther or really get better. It just kind of, it's good, but doesn't really get to where I like it a little bit more. Track 7, One of my favorites, Blurred Girl. Nice change of pace. Some cool sounds on here for some cool sounds on here. For the most part, it's sung really well. I got it at 3.25 stars. And then my favorite track on here is 030. Excuse me. I really like the keyboard hook. It's kind of robotic and minimal at the same time. Really kind of stark and futuristic as well. I got it 3.75 stars, almost to excellent. Really good track. Really like that one. Track number 9, Tidal Wave. This one's got some really cool spacey sounds. It's a pretty good track. I got it 2.5 stars. And then the last track, Touch and Go. It definitely has some Kraftwerk bassline. It sounds very much like Mr. X from Ultravox, and that's where there's kind of a interesting maybe backstory. So John Foxx leaves Ultravox, right? Ultravox makes a song called Mr. X. You know, John Foxx has 2 X's in Fox. They call him Mr. X. And then John Foxx does Touch and Go, the last track on here as well. I think Mr. X is one of the last tracks as well. Or maybe it wasn't, but he sort of does Touch and Go where it's kind of like a play on Mr. X. So I'm not sure which one came first. Well, I take that back. I mean, I think Vienna came in first. Vienna album came first, but I'm not for sure certain that I think both of these albums are 1980, Vienna and Metamatic. So I'm not sure which is first, but it's interesting that they both did a track that sort of sounds similar to each other, and then he was in their band. So I'm not sure what that all means. If you know, I'd be interested to hear if you want to tell me what that's about. But maybe there's some animosity there, you know, with John Foxx leaving, and I'm sure John Foxx felt some. You know, I got to hand it to the guy that had a lot of commitment, a lot of pride to, but also a lot of knowledge. I mean, not a lot of foresight, sort of, but he's got enough conviction to say, no, I don't want to be in Ultravox. I want to do my own thing, and this is how I want to sound, and this is how he wanted to sound. I respect that a lot, you know, especially considering that, you know, Ultravox was going to be big. Of course, Midjour kind of took over and helped make them big and make them more popular, but I think Ultravox would have been there as well. You know, maybe not as much. Midjour is definitely a little bit more mainstream than John Foxx is a little bit more artsy and definitely wanted it more electronic, where I think Midjour wants it a little bit of combination, probably even more so into rock music. Or just alternative music, or maybe even new wave, more so than electronic. Because Vienna is a lot more avant-garde than people might think. They kind of think of like the title track or maybe another track on there, but there's some raw electronic music on there, and with Billy Currie and them. So it's interesting that they kind of made this song at the same time. But yeah, both talented, and you know, instead of one band, we got 2 really great artists to follow. So kind of a odd bonus, but it'd have been interesting to hear John Foxx continue with Ultravox. But then again, it wouldn't be, because it would sound like this if John Foxx was the leader. I would imagine, you know, otherwise he just wouldn't be in there, because you know, I don't know, maybe John Foxx didn't want to use the Warren can, or just use a drummer in general, and rather go all electronic like he did here. But yeah, it's just interesting, and but I got to give it to John. He sounds unique in his own way for sure. I'm a fan of both. I don't know how you feel about liking the early Ultravox. The early Ultravox albums are a little bit more glam rock than sort of Vienna, and going forward are more electronic or new wave. But I'm not sure if you have a favorite, but it seems like longtime fans like like John Foxx a lot better than Midjour. You know, for the good and the bad. I don't really have. I like both of them, and I'm glad that John Foxx did some solo work and just didn't leave the band. Um, but yeah, looking at the overall good of this album, um, he got some really good sounds and tones from his equipment to record this album. There's a lot of really cool sounds going on in this album. Maybe I didn't really emphasize that by talking about the songs, but there's some really good sounds in here. And for 1980, like the atmosphere of some of these songs are really good, considering, there's a lot of layering going on. There's a lot of darker sounds and not necessarily all pop music. It's really a good use of electronic music for the time. I mean, I don't. I mean, it's like comparing it to like Kraftwerk of 1980. I'd have to say that this is more in depth, and that makes sense because Kraftwerk necessarily were a little bit more straightforward electronic or electro pop, right? And this is more avant-garde, minimal electronic. So I get why this is deeper, but there's not too much to compare. Maybe like Gary Newman, 1980 or something like that, but this is 1980. I mean, when this album came out, this is, maybe I'd have to even compare it to like, this is, I would imagine Simple Minds probably heard this and was like, wow, this is an awesome album. We got to go in that direction. I could see somebody like Simple Minds or somebody that was around at that time, being like, wow, this is a really good album. Maybe like OMD even, you know. This is a very good minimal electro pop album. I guess people would sort of say it's that genre, but this is a really good album, especially sound wise. I think that the songs could be a little bit better, maybe a little bit more, maybe the lyrics and, vocals are, I do have that. The lyrics and the vocals are a little vague. Um, and maybe he tries a little bit, to be sort of spooky in some ways and sort of, but it works, Um, I think there's still something like when you listen to this album, even a few times, it still feels like you're discovering certain sounds and um, certain sounds a little bit more so every time you hear it, and just kind of understand the album better each time you hear it. And I think that's a positive thing when you want to hear something again and when you can get something out of it differently the second or third or fourth, fifth time, right? So it definitely makes you want to listen to it again and sort of hear the nuances, especially if you're an electronic sounds person like I am. I really like the effects on this album. Um, if you like, if I would compare him to everything, if you don't know him, it sounds like if you sort of put Gary Newman and Kraftwerk together, it would sort of sound like this in a way. There's like the minimalism and the spookiness and the darkness of Gary Newman, but then there is some pop appeal like Kraftwerk would do. Maybe some rhythms like Kraftwerk would do. Um, but not only does it have keyboard good keyboard sounds, but again, it has good bass, good drum programming, and there's unique resonances and atmospheres on the sounds. It's layered really well. Gareth Jones was the engineer, so I find him very talented. He worked a lot with Erasure and a lot of other mute artists, so that makes sense that they had somebody as strong as him on engineering this album because this album sounds great. I looked at the list. It does show the list of the equipment that he uses listed online. The Mini Moog, ARP Odyssey. Those are two of my favorite uh, pieces. Clavinet, it's really strong. Elka Rhapsody 610. I don't know that. I don't know the Farfisa string synth either. Hammond organ is like a classic that uses that, and then it also uses a piano. So I mean, just some really good pieces of equipment, for the most part, and not overly done with a lot of stuff. Like just some core pieces, um, really led to the strong sound of the album. Really, when I think of the opportunities on the album, Maybe a little bit more evolution on the songs, but it is sort of a minimal pop album in some ways, so maybe that wouldn't work. But just a possibility. Also, some people might think the lyrics on the songs are a bit basic or a bit naive. I wouldn't say naive, but a bit vague and meaningless. Maybe somebody would feel like that. I don't necessarily feel that. I do feel that they are a little vague. With his accent and stuff like that, it's hard to hear some of the words. It's sort of hard to comprehend some of the words. But that's the very very basic critiques on that, and just maybe a possibility that could be more evolutions on the songs. I think I just want more of the good parts of the songs, more of the good sounds on some of these to be expanded on. I really like the sounds on here, so I kind of just wish there was a little bit more on some of the songs and some of the instruments, kind of maybe highlighting some, or not even soloing, but just it's kind of like minimal structure within sort of a pop uh, sort of period, or what I mean, sort of a structure also, but it's kind of like it's a pop song, but within it there's some minimal going on. But I kind of wish there was a little bit more minimal overall to the songs, and having some go out 5, 6, 7 minutes, and so just sort of kind of evolve some of the sounds and highlight some of the songs. Could have been really cool. Um, uh, yeah. So the overall, also the touch and go, because Mr. X. It's a lot of people talk about the early, the first techno tracks, right? So Juan Atkins, um, Cybertron, The Alleys of Your Mind is considered one of the first techno tracks. I think it came out like '81, and it's kind of loosely based on Mr. X, but since Touch and Go is also sort of sounds like that. I'm not sure if he heard Touch and Go or Mr. X first. Just wanted to mention that. I'm not sure if that's. I would probably imagine he heard Ultravox first because they're more popular, but Touch and Go is very similar. But yeah, just a side note, wanted to mention that because they're very much like Alleys of Your Mind, um, or is it Cosmic Cars? No, I think it's Alleys of Your Mind by Juan Atkins, um, Cybotron. All right, so wow, kind of looking at the overall. So I got two tracks. I got three tracks that are good and seven that are very good. So a strong mix of very good. When I total up the stars, 29 and 3/4 stars divided by 10 songs is 2.97. So that's right near a very good album, right near 70. And considering the sounds on here, I pushed it up a couple extra points for a score of 73 out of 100. Uh, so yeah, that's my overall rating and opinion of John Foxx's debut album, Meta, Meta, I can never remember, Metamatic. I always want to say Metamatrix. Metamatic. Really good album. Really good sounds on here. If you like electron music and you don't know this album, check it out. 73 out of 100. My top three favorite tracks on here are 030, Underpass, and Blurred Girl. But again, a lot of good tracks on here. Check it out.